Welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. And thank you for your patience. I know we had a couple week break there, but I have been out elk hunting with my old man and my brother. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, but it was the first time the three of us had ever hunted together. It's my brother's first hunt at all, and my father's second Western hunt. He's pretty experienced moose hunter from Ontario, but he's only been out west once before. He came out for elk last time, and we got skunked then too. And I'll get into kind of the lessons learned and the takeaways for myself from that later on. But that's where I've been. That's why it's been quiet. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to dive into the gear list for our hunt. And it's kind of interesting because this was a bit of a different hunt for me. It was a large base camp style hunt where we were kind of camping out of the back of a truck on like a capped off oil lease in a big seek outside 12-man teepee. So some of the gear that we ran is different than some of the gear that I would typically take on a backcountry hunt, for example. So we're going to go through that. I'm also going to get into the lessons learned and kind of some notes I took while I was away and things I might do differently next time. And also things that I really liked and things that worked and all of that good stuff. As always, if you can engage with the platform in any way, like, comment, share, subscribe, it's greatly appreciated. If you want to support the podcast directly, go to mindfulhunter.com/shop and pick up a t-shirt. I have some pretty exciting news on the way in regards to reviews that I'm hoping to announce sometime in the next couple weeks. And I'm really excited. It's a pretty big deal, so stay tuned for that. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of today's podcast, I do want to share. This is Thursday morning when I'm recording this. It's 5:30, and I was supposed to be leaving to guide a moose hunt this afternoon. That hunt got canceled, kind of due to some shitty weather and low activity and a couple other things outside of my control, and that's okay. I'm disappointed because it was my first hunt I was going to be guiding, and I was really excited for that opportunity, and it's something that I'd like to do more of moving forward, and it was going to be a good way to get my foot in the door. But shit happens, and it's not the end of the world. Now the upside is I had already planned to take the week off work, so I'm going to take the week off work, and I'm going to go back hunting by myself. And I'm going to go back hunting kind of in the same area we were just hunting, and I'm going to try and put an elk down. I think it's probably my best odds of getting something. At this point in the season, I've had 2 unsuccessful hunts. Priority for me is just meat in the freezer, and that's such a cliche thing to say. But I'm telling you right now, if I step out of that truck on the first morning and there's a cow sitting there, it's getting shot. Like I am going to an area where, cows are open. So yeah, I'm not being picky at all. I'm going up north to get some meat and come back home kind of as quickly as I possibly can. So that being said, I am headed up to the Peace. I've got some decent points where I saw some sign and heard some bugles from the last hunt. And then a couple of buddies have been good enough to shoot me a couple more. But if anybody's been up there this season, specifically later this season, and you can kind of let me know how it's going, are they still bugling? Any information would be greatly appreciated. You can either shoot me a DM on Instagram or send me an email, jay@mindfulhunter.com. Always greatly appreciated. It's that was one of my big takeaways this year is that I really felt the sense of community. Like when people heard that I was trying to get my dad an elk, a couple guys reached out, locals, and really did their best to help out. We didn't get to tip one over, but it wasn't through lack of trying, and it wasn't through lack of good local knowledge. Sometimes things just don't come together. So I just wanted to put that out there. If anybody's got any tips or intel, always greatly appreciated. All right, let's dive into we'll do the gear dump first, and then we'll do lessons learned. So I was running a pack that I can't talk about testing an early version of a pack for a company, and they're not releasing the information yet. So I can tell you this: it is my favorite pack to date. But that's all. That's all I'm going to tell you. Hopefully, I can release more information on that soon. In addition to that, my dad was running the Seek Outside Terminus, and the Stone Glacier Terminus, and my brother was running the Stone Glacier Sky Guide 7900. Couple takeaways from that: the Sky Guide 7900 is kind of a not ideal for a day pack. And I think in one of my earlier reviews, I kind of thought it collapsed a little bit better than it does. But when you're doing these day hunts from a big camp and you don't need to put much at all in your pack, I just found I hate floppy lids. Kafaru has the same problem, and I don't know why. Like, it's so easy to solve. Like, if they would just put some buckle attachments right at the top of the frame, so that when the bag is completely empty, you can just have the lid clip directly onto the top of the frame. But instead, they run it from these straps that come all the way down near where the shoulder straps come off. So what happens when the bag is empty and doesn't have enough material to force the lid to stay extended, the lid runs like halfway down the bag and it just flops there. And it looks like shit, and it's a pain in the ass because it's always like on top of your main compartment. And it just seems like poor design to me. Like, just take the time and think about, because like most people don't have enough money for a day pack and an expedition pack. And if you're only going to buy one, you're going to buy the one that's bigger. So recognize that and give people a way to attach the lid properly. Now, I guess another option in that scenario would be to just remove the lid. And I think that's probably what they would offer as the solution, because if you don't have that much material anyways, you probably don't need the extra carrying capacity of the lid. My reply, however, is that the lid is the most easily accessible component. It's where you put your food and like those things that you're going to want to reach in and get real quickly. And I also like it when you're hunting, you can set your bag down pretty quietly and get into the lid pretty quickly. And so it's easier for those things that you're going to want quick access to without making a lot of noise. To get into the main compartment of the bag, you're undoing more zippers, or you're unrolling it and unclipping it. And it's just, in general, there's more fabric being displaced, so you're making more rustling. So that was a bit of a disappointment. The Terminus behaved extremely well as a day pack. I think I would put a water bottle holster on the hip belt, and I would add I didn't add any hip belt pockets. That's a failure on my part. I have them, I just didn't put them on before we left. And I think both my dad and brother would have appreciated a hip belt pouch and a Nalgene holster on their hip belts, because I had them on mine, and they commented several times that they had the same options on there. But other than that, didn't really get a chance to test the packs too in depth. So now for shelter, we had a Seek Outside 12-man teepee. Super happy with the teepee. I did record some in teepee footage, so I will. Oh, you know what? I should make a note on this right now. I meant to address this at the beginning of the podcast. I won't be releasing a film of the hunt. There's a couple reasons. I did shoot some footage. Didn't really shoot enough to make a film. But about halfway through the hunt, a couple things happened. One, the hunting was kind of tough, and I just kind of wanted to be present, instead of like doing all these like talking to the camera kind of bullshit, tacky things and getting them to say stuff on camera. It was a family hunt, and I just wanted to have fun and be there with my family and not worry about making a film. And then I'll be honest, when the hunt wrapped up and we were unsuccessful again, I just don't have it in my heart right now to make another film where I'm unsuccessful. It's hard because you go out there and I know, oh, we had a good time and we spent time together and all that, but you're trying to kill something. And if you're not, I don't know why you're out there. And I've never had problem admitting that to myself, and when I fail, I never have problem embracing that. But it's not a pleasant experience. I don't enjoy failing. It's not something I want to showcase on a regular basis. I'm not going to hide it, but it's a after the sheep hunt and then to put up another unsuccessful film, I was just like, I don't have this inside me to sit down for a week and edit me failing again. So yeah, there it is. I'm not putting one up. I got some good pictures and some good, other like little clips and stuff that I can put up as some reels, but yeah, no hunt film. But I do have some footage from the teepee, and I will be putting a review of the teepee up on my YouTube, so stay tuned for that. I'll get into more depth. I put a half liner in it, and I have some other learnings from the teepee that we can get into there. But overall, I was very happy with the teepee. It was easy to set up. It was great in the rain. It was great in the wind for some type of like big base camp thing like that with multiple dudes, where you've got the ability to either fly in or drive in, lots of gear like cots and chairs and all that kind of stuff. It kicked ass. I think it was probably the best shelter we could have ran for that particular scenario. Now, we each slept on a Cabela's cot. These are the lever arm cots. They retail for $150. I got them on sale for $100 the week before the hunt. Super comfortable, super big, heavy as shit. I don't really think I paid attention to what they weigh, but they're 30 pounds each. And when you go to pull a 30-pound cot out of the back of the truck, you feel every pound. I don't think they'd be a great fly-in option if you're trying to watch weight, because you can have 100 pounds just in cots. And here's the other thing. They're full-size cots, full-height cots. And I never really thought about this, but because the teepee has such sloped walls and the cot height, I don't know, maybe it's 24 inches. It's like the height of an average chair because it feels comfortable when you just sit down on the cot. It eats up a ton of space inside the teepee because you can only push them out so far against the walls. And we really had problems organizing the three cots in a way that they were all under the side with the liner, because the liner is what stops the condensation from dripping on you. And I had to stick one half of my cot, like from my waist down, kind of out into the other side, which is like not a big deal. It got a bit of condensation in the surface of my sleeping bag would be a little bit damp in the morning, but like it totally worked. It was fine. I would do it again if I had to, and no big deal. It also really only rained for the first day and a half. If it had piss rained the whole time, that might have got to the point where it was an issue. But the takeaway is, if you're going to run a teepee and you want to run cots, run low profile cots of some kind. Helinox has some, Thermarest has some, even Cabela's have some. You want those like cots that are 6 to 8 inches up off the ground. And the reason being, you can then push them all the way to the outside of the teepee and leave the inside of the teepee available for space and chairs and sitting, and you would then be able to get them all against the side that had the liner on it. You could also line the entire teepee. You could buy 2 half liners. Only drawbacks are you then up having liners on the inside of the doors, which covers up the hooks that keep the doors open. Kind of surprised Seek Outside didn't address this, and maybe they have in a way that I just didn't notice. But I thought you could have had, little grommets in the liner where the toggles that keep the door open could have slid through, and then you still would have been able to roll back the doors and keep them open with the toggles. But currently, when you have the liner on half of the door, you can't pull back that half of the door and keep it tight with the toggles. So that's a drawback. And then the additional weight of the extra half liner, which is like not the end of the world. I don't know, maybe it's a pound or 2 or something. And if you're in a truck or a plane, it's not that big a deal. For sleeping bags, I had all 3 of mine out. My dad ran the Kafaru slick bag. My brother ran my Enlightened Equipment synthetic quilt, and I ran my Enlightened Equipment down quilt. Both of those are the Enigma, and they're good to -7 Celsius. And I think the synthetic one especially is maybe even, it's a little underrated. I think it's actually a little warmer than that. So we were more than warm enough. It was very warm most of the hunt. We did have a wood stove, and we did, I brought a couple boxes of those compressed wood fire logs. Actually, one of them was made out of coffee, and it smelled really good. I guess they make compressed fire logs out of old coffee. But sleeping bags were perfect. Yeah, Dad loved the slick bag. Brother loved the quilt. He'd never ran a quilt before, and he was over the moon. He thought it was perfect. Didn't bother with backcountry pillows. We had real pillows. I did pack my 7x9 foot Z-Packs tarp, but never had the need to use it. I brought my cell booster in my truck, and this is something I don't normally talk about, but I figured because it was such a truck hunt, and because, looking up maps and getting directions and Googling things was a little more prevalent during this hunt than a typical backcountry hunt. I use a Wee Boost. I forget the actual brand name. It's about $600 or $700 on Amazon. It's it's the best mobile one they have, and it's basically got a little puck that you stick behind your cell phone cradle in your phone, and anything that's within a foot or two of that puck gets boosted. And this cell booster works as well as you could expect a cell booster to work. It works quite well in that it will get you basically one more bar. So if you're in an area where you're just running out of service and you can't make a phone call, it will give you one more bar and get you reliable phone service. If you're in an area where you got one bar and you can make a phone call but you don't have enough to do data, it will get you that extra bar so then you can do some data. It won't be screaming fast, but you'll be able to check email and you reply to DMs on Instagram and stuff like that. If you're in an area where there's absolutely no cell phone service, it's not magic. It's not going to make cell phone service where there isn't any, but I like to think it gives a good 10 to 15% boost to whatever cell phone service is in the area. And it's even nice. I normally hook it up. It's external, so it's not something I leave hooked up all the time because you end up having a magnet with a cable on the top of your truck. And I got a new truck on the way that I'm picking up in a couple weeks, and I want to think of some way to hard mount it and run the cable somewhere where I don't have to keep worrying about it getting caught in a door. But I normally bring it on my long drives because for anybody who's driven, you're basically fine to PG, but if you go north of PG, there's significant dead spots that can sometimes run for 1 to 2 hours or more. And it really helps shrink those dead spots down to being shorter. And so when you're on the road, it's nice to have access to your cell phone. I always carry an air pump in the truck and a tire patching kit as well. That's more like truck related stuff than hunting related stuff. But I made the gear list a little bit different this time because I knew we would be spending so much time in the truck and be on a ton of resource roads, which tend to be further away from getting help. So I spend a little bit more time preparing for that. Brought 3 camp chairs. Now, as far as clothing goes, I'll run through mine. This is kind of like my go-to setup that I wear all the time. So for base layers, the Sitka Core lightweight hoodie, the Lululemon boxers, and for socks, the Darn Tough over-the-calf socks. For pants, the Sitka Ascent pants, which are my favorite pants, hands down. You have to buy the knee pads separately. I just used mine from my extra Apex pants, but definitely if you're going to buy those pants and you don't own other Sitka pants with knee pads, buy the knee pads. I know it sounds like they're going to be a pain in the ass. My brother put on my mountain pants and they had knee pads, and he's like, these things are going to annoy me. I'm like, just leave them in for a day or two, and if you want to take them out, I'll show you how. And at the end of the first day, he was like, these knee pads are the best thing ever. I'm like, I told you, man. You think it's going to be annoying, but it's not. They're not. They're a really well-designed feature of those pants. For gaiters, I was running the second version of the ape gaiters that Alex sent me. He gave me another version. I gave him some feedback after the sheep hunt. He gave me a new version, and I'm incredibly happy with that new version. They're the best gaiters I've run to date. I haven't run the Stone Glacier ones, and I'm interested to try those. But I've run a lot of other gaiters, and these are my favorite ones so far, but they have only been on a single 9-day hunt, so I can't really speak to durability yet. I'm taking them back up with me, so we'll see. There's one little design recommendation I had, but other than that, they were really great. Now, for the rest of my setup, I had a Sitka Ambient hoodie, which I didn't really wear that much. I wore it for a little bit in the mornings, and then I had the Dew Point rain gear. Now, my brother wore like a simple MEC base layer, a pair of dry fit boxers. He wore my mountain pants, and then he wore the Sitka Core heavyweight hoodie. And he had my Stone Glacier puffy to put on over top of that. And my dad wore the Sitka Apex pants with another like basic MEC, poly base layer, and he wore my Kelvin Active jacket, which to me is kind of like the precursor to the Ambient hoodie. The Ambient hoodie fixed all like that Kelvin Active jacket is one of my favorite pieces, but there was just a couple issues I had with it, and I feel like the Ambient hoodie corrected all those issues that I had, and it's kind of like the perfect incarnation of that particular piece of kit. And then he also had my Kelvin Light. What is it called? The Kelvin Aerolite jacket. That's what he had for a puffy layer. And he liked that a lot. And then he tended to wear long johns, like cotton long johns as well, which is kind of new to me. But yeah, he was comfy like a pair of Stanfields or whatever he was, and pretty classic. And they worked really good. And then my brother wore the Stormfront rain gear, and I gave my dad my old Helly Hansen Armor Tech rain gear from when I used to work in the bush. So everybody was super kitted out as far as gear goes. I ran the Schnee's Timberlines, and both my brother and dad, I got them a pair of Schnee's Beartooths, which they loved. Nobody had any foot problems. I was the only one that had some. And basically, the Timberlines, where they crease right across, what's the best way to explain this? When you roll forward on the ball of your foot and the boot creases kind of right along where your toes join your foot. Sometimes on newer boots, that crease is like really hard and it digs into your feet. And man, it kind of beat the shit out of my feet. It like bruised my feet. And so by the third or fourth day, because we were hiking so much every day, I just couldn't recoup at night. And it didn't slow me down or hold me back, but it did hurt a lot. And I don't know if it's just the right boot didn't do it. It was just the left boot. I don't want to say it's really a function of the boot itself, but I broke them in beforehand. I wore them on a half a dozen hikes. They felt good. Everything else about the boots was great. But yeah, it really kind of beat the shit out of my foot. I'm going to try them again and see that once my foot recovers, if now that the boot is softer, the crease doesn't kind of re-bruise my foot when I wear them again. But we'll see. Stay tuned for that. Okay, optics and stuff. I had my NL Pure 12x42s, used them sporadically for anybody. We were hunting elk in the Peace, and for anybody who's been up there, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to use binos. I used them sometimes. I was glad I had them, but I didn't need to worry about binos for everybody, that's for sure. And I was running the Alaska Guide Creations bino harness. I've been going back and forth between the marsupial and the Alaskan, and I think for my personal preference, I prefer the Alaskan. I'm going to do a head-to-head review on those two products shortly, but the Cole's notes are I like a multifunctional bino harness. I like to carry a bunch of stuff up front. I like my phone. The Alaska Guide Creations has this little stretchy pocket on top that my phone slides into perfectly. And when I'm calling elk, there's another stretchy layer on top of the phone compartment where I can slide my mouth reeds in, and everything's like super handy, super reachable. There's pockets. There's 3 additional pockets on the bino harness. So I have my wind checker in one. And the marsupial just doesn't really offer any of those options. It's got those 2 stretchy pockets on the sides, but that's not the same thing. And I love it for like a minimalist bino harness, but I think for the functionality, the Alaskan Guide Creations wins out for me. I was shooting the Loophole rangefinder, and I was basically running all Phelps calling gear. I had the Phelps, might be the Renegade. It's the big ass bugle tube. I had the metal bugle tube and I was going to give it a try, but I just never bothered switching out. And then the mouth reed I've had the most success with is Phelps's signature pink. It makes really good cow calls and really good bugles for me. And I like the simplicity of just carrying one reed. I guess it's not a reed, it's a diaphragm. I apologize. I like the simplicity of carrying one mouth diaphragm. And yeah, that's it for calls. Now, for guns, you all know I have a Fierce 300 PRC and a Tikka 300 Win Mag. Took both of those. Left the bipod at home because I knew the density of material we were going to be in. Everybody carried 8 bullets apiece, 3 in one in the gun and 4 in their pocket. Don't need to go over film gear because it's the same stuff I always use for those curious. It's a Sony A1, the 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 Sony G Master version 2. I have a backup 14 mil f1.4, and I bring 2 GoPro Hero 9s, and then I got a variety of batteries and straps. For sleeping pads, I used the Q-Core SLX. My dad used my Xped Hyperlight down mat, and my brother used my Thermarest Neo Air Light. And we all slept pretty good on the cots with those. Brought a variety of, small stuff. I had my Possibles pouch, 2 sets of game bags. I brought my SteriPen, only used it once. I am running the new Garmin 66i instead of the InReach. I brought both of them on this trip in case we split up. I thought it would be handy to be able to message each other, but we didn't need to do that. And so this next trip I'm leaving on, I'm going to run the 66i exclusively. I'm still not a fan of the Garmin mapping functionality, or the Garmin user interface is probably a better way to describe that. It just seems to me like we're this far down the development and you haven't been able to improve your user interface since like 1998. Like, it's the same shitty interface from when I was doing layout in '08. You know what I mean? Like, it's been 14 years and you still have a D-pad and an arrow and this tiny little shit screen with low resolution. And like, the unit cost $1,000. And I was really disappointed because everybody had gone on about how great the 66i was. And yes, it's sturdy. Yes, it allows you to load maps. Of the options on the market, I do believe it's the best one. But Garmin, get your shit together. Like, the reason everybody is leaving your platform and just carrying their phone is because the screen is gigantic. It's a touch screen and the user interface is, completely intuitive. You can pinch and zoom, you can scroll around, you can double tap, that's how people are used to engaging with technological devices these days. So get your shit together. I had to shake my head at that. Like, everything looks like it's 8-bit on the screen, and then you got to move this stupid arrow around. And then if with the maps, as you zoom out, layers disappear on you. So you're either zoomed so far in that you can't see where you are in relation to everything else in order to get the roads that you want to show up, or you zoom far enough out that you can actually see where you are, then all the roads disappear. And you're just like, this is crazy. Anyways, a disappointing piece of gear, in my opinion. Again, there's no other better ones. If you want a hardcore communication device that will double as a navigation device, I do think the 66i is your best choice of the ones out there. But that doesn't mean I think it's a good piece of gear. What else? Ran some typical batteries, typical Nalgene's, nothing there. I brought the MSR reactor because I've got a 1.7 liter pot instead of my Jetboil Minimo with the 1 liter pot, because there was 3 of us. I did pick up a new headlamp. I got the Phoenix, I don't know, I think it's called the H65T, which is for the trail running version. It doesn't have the third strap across the top of the head. It's taking a little while for me to get used to a heavier headlamp, but when I started asking around, everybody really does seem to be migrating to these like really powerful primary headlamps. You keep a smaller one as backup, but I mean, BioLite has a really good one. There's another company, it's like Nightshade, or I forget what it's called. They've got one, but we're talking like north of 1,000 lumens. Like I think the Phoenix is 1,500 lumens when you have both lights jacked up, and you can run it for 4 hours on full power like that, or it runs, I don't even know, 24 or 36 on smaller when you don't have it as light. But it took me a little while to get used to it, and I personally don't think the strap is quite big enough. But overall, it was a really nice headlamp. Like it's definitely nicer than the Black Diamond Revolt that I'm used to, for sure. Little spendy. I don't know, it's like $100 or something, but overall, I'm currently liking it, and I will continue to test it and do a more thorough review once I've had an opportunity to run it for longer in some more situations. And then just the food. We treated it like a backpack hunt. So I Peak Refuel, Green Belly, Cliff Snacks, Chewies, all that kind of stuff. I packed 30 bags just like I would for myself, 10 days, 3 bags a day for 3 dudes. And the reason I did this is I just wanted to focus on hunting. And it would have been nice to have a cooler full of real food and come back in the morning and do bacon and eggs and all this other stuff. But it's also a pain in the ass. And when I'm hiking all day and I get back to camp, to just be able to throw on some water and fill up a Peak Refuel. And I actually really like the Peak. I've found 3 or 4 flavors of Peak Refuel that I love. And the other guys loved it too. And so I think there's a strong argument to be made for that. Also, here's the deal. My brother's never hunted before, and my dad was in Ontario. So I was prepping. I was doing all the prep for this hunt. These dudes literally just got to rock up, pack the truck, and leave. Everything was ready, organized, good to go. Now, if I was going with buddies, or if if Mark had more experience or my dad lived in town and we could like divvy up some of the responsibility and somebody could just handle meal planning and grocery shopping, maybe I would have done that instead, because having real food around would have been nice, but I was maxed out as it was getting everything ready. So that's essentially it for the gear list. If you want me to dive deeper into anything that I talked about, or you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out. Now, when I head back out, I'm going to be camping out of the truck again, but I'm going to stay hyper mobile. In fact, I'm not even taking a tent, and I'm just going to sleep in the back of the truck, or just roll out my bedroll on the ground if it's not going to rain. And the reason that I'm doing this is I want to stay hyper mobile. And I'll get into the lessons learned, but I basically want to be able to roll up to a spot, hunt it, and then at night, if I haven't seen what I needed to see, drive to a new spot, camp right at a trailhead, because that's Another thing is like protecting your morning spots. There's so many dudes on quads up there that you'll have a trailhead or a quad trail that you want to walk down in the morning. We were really lucky. I got the guys up every day at like 4:30, and so we never lost one of our morning spots, but we saw lots of dudes who were trying to come to the spot, and I would get to the spot at like 4:45, and I would just let the dudes nap in the truck, and we'd sit coffee until 5:45 when it was time to get out. And lots of times dudes were rolling by on side by sides and wanted to go hunt down the quad trail that I had my truck parked in front of. And it's just like early bird gets the worm. But if I'm going back up there by myself and I can do it, I'm just going to sleep in my truck right on the quad trail where I want to hunt in the morning. And then I've put my name on it and I can go, because I stress about that stuff. As soon as I wake up, I'm like, we need to go, we need to go, we need to go. Somebody's going to get there. And if I can just sleep there, then it's a much more relaxing. And it's also clear to people. Like I'm walking, I'm not on a quad, so it's not like I burn as much ground as they do. And at least that way, it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to hunt, and I'm right here, and you know where I'm going to hunt. That's another note. Yeah, let me break out the notes because I don't want to get ahead of myself and forget stuff here as I go. Okay, so moving forward, hunting up there, I need a quad or a side-by-side. And not because I want to spend all day cruising quad trails. However, there's two reasons. All over the place, there's quad trails where like the first 2 to 3K is just dead walking. For whatever reason, you know there's going to be very limited likelihood of elk, or the place you're really trying to get is 2 to 3 kilometers down a quad trail. And when you have to walk all of those every day, it like cuts the amount of ground that you can get into in like half, simply because the amount of time you spend dead walking. And you need a quad to get down there, or a side-by-side. The second reason is the way the road systems work up there. There are areas that are connected by seismic lines and quad trails that would take you 10 minutes. But if you have to take your pickup truck, sometimes it can take you over an hour because you got to back way out. Like it's only 4 kilometers away as the crow flies, but there's no road system. So you got to back way out to a major junction, get on a different main line, and go all the way back in. And there was a couple times where I could literally see where I wanted to go, and I just couldn't get there in a pickup truck. And I'm like, I'm not going to burn an hour and a half driving over there just to pop my head in. And so 100% you need a quad or a side-by-side. And one of the things I'd like to ask you guys, I was kind of contemplating on renting a quad for this trip, but I don't know because I'm only going up for 1 week. I don't know if it's really worth it. Maybe I should just spend my time focusing on hike-in areas, because you do need to hike to get away from the pressure. That was the other thing. But let me know what quads you guys are running and what quads you like and what quads you don't like. And same for side-by-sides. So far, I've been recommended the Yamaha Wolverine 850 for a side-by-side by a buddy of mine whose opinion I trust. I used to be really comfortable with quads because I use them in forestry for so long, but it's been 10 years. Well, not 10, maybe 7 or 8 since I was running quads on a regular basis. We always had really good luck with the Yamaha Grizzlies. That was a really sturdy quad for me. And tree planting a Honda Foreman was like the go-to quad. Like they would never die. But I'd be really curious as to what quads people are liking these days. And also, I want to buy a used quad. I stuck my face on Facebook Marketplace and had a little look around. And it looks like for between $3,500 and $5,500, you can get a pretty decent machine that should still be pretty, problem free for, the next few years. I also want to start taking my daughter scouting with me in the summertime, so I need to get something to bomb us around on. So also, if anybody's got any deals on any quads, just any quad or side-by-side related information, it's not an area I'm super confident in. On that note, I'm also looking for a trailer. So I really want to get set up for next summer with my daughter because she's getting old enough now. and I want us to have a small trailer. I'm thinking like an 18-foot or a 20-foot, nothing crazy, maybe some small slide out, but probably not even a slide out because I don't want to deal with the water issues. But I would really love throughout the winter to be able to add a 20-foot trailer, 18 to 20-foot trailer, and a quad or a side-by-side. So next summer, I'm more equipped to do that local BC stuff, and I can bring my kid around with me in a pretty comfortable way, so she'll be more inclined to want to come out and do scouting with me. So that would be another area that I'd ask you guys for some feedback. I know basically every trailer has water issues, but are there particular brands that you've had success with or particular brands that have been problematic? Do you know of any good deals? I really don't want to spend any more than 10 or 12 grand on a trailer, but I've been looking around and there's like 2010 and 2012 models of like decent, Jaycos and other stuff that look like they're still in really good condition. Some have had the floors redone or reupholstered on the inside, and they still look like reasonably nice trailers for that 10, 12K mark. But yeah, circle back with me and let me know. Either shoot me a DM on Instagram or jay@mindfulhunter.com, and that would be really appreciated. So definitely need a quad or a side-by-side. I also said I need to be putting more effort during the off season developing reasonable hunting plans. And following that up, I wrote, the guys who live up north and are successful are so successful because they put in the time in the off season. And I think from the guys in the city, we think, oh, these guys up north have it so easy. They just go out every year and kill an elk. And what I'm recognizing is I make friends with more of these dudes and they become like a little bit more helpful, is that, yeah, they're successful, but because they put in the work. Like these dudes are running cams during the off season. They're going out and scouting and looking for game trails in the summer. Like this is how I used to hunt blacktail in the valley. Like if you don't run a preseason camera plan with blacktail, you're just pissing in the wind. Maybe you'll find one, maybe you won't. You really have no idea. And so even with elk, I've never really thought about preseason scouting with elk much, simply because they move around and their summer behavior is not the same as their rut behavior. However, because these guys are tracking them so much, they understand where they're going to be moving when they go through those behavioral shifts. And I just really wanted to call out the fact that, like, yeah, these guys who are having success, it's not luck. And it's not just because they live where they live. It's because there's a more reasonable opportunity to do scouting because they live where they live. They can go out for half days on Saturdays. They can go, most of these guys are scouting, half an hour from town where they live. So yeah, that's an advantage for sure, but they're still putting the work in. And that's why I really want to put together this trailer and quad package for next summer, is that I want to be able to take off for the weekend with my kid, set up cams, move cams, check cams, go to different areas, so that next fall, when it's time to go, I'm ready to hit the ground running. It's very similar to my bodybuilding experience. Everybody wants to do a prep. Everybody wants to cut and get shredded. But if you don't put in the work in the off season to actually build new lean tissue, you're going to shred down and just be a skinny little bitch. And I feel the same way about hunting. I keep feeling like a skinny little bitch every September when I'm kind of showing up without a realistic game plan. So, going to be a little bit harder on myself this year and make sure to put in the work in the off season that's necessary. Also, I need to spend more time hunting with people who are better than me. I think this is something I've overlooked. I kind of feel like I have this weird perspective that if I don't figure it out on my own, it's cheating. But I only think about a couple things in life that way. Like when it comes to do with business or even bodybuilding, I'm very ready to admit that coaching and mentorship is like a key element of success. But somehow in hunting, I feel like I've got to figure this shit out myself. And I had some early success. Like a couple years ago, I had just a string of success where I was like 6 or 7 hunts in a row, tipped over 6 or 7 animals in a row. And I think I confused a little bit of luck with a lot of skill. There are some things I'm good at, but there's still a lot of things that I need to improve at. And so I thought I had it all figured out. And then now I've had this run of kind of kicking the nut hunts, and it's forcing me to admit to myself, and they've been tough. And like, I don't want to completely shit on myself. I've done a good job and I'm decent at what I do. However, I have to admit the fact that there's a gap in my skill base. And I think one of the best ways to fix that gap is to find people who are better than I am and say, can I spend some time with you? Can I come out for a hunt? I've even been thinking, because the filming thing, like, maybe find some dudes who have a big hunt plan and be like, can I just tag along? I'm not going to come back to your area. I'm not looking for your spots, but I'll film the hunt and we can hang out, and I just want to learn. Because I think that, and one dude in particular reached out after seeing my sheep hunt, and he's taken a couple sheep, and he said, like, listen, if you want to chat, and like, I will share with you, what I know about this. It's not everything, but I after watching the hunt, he could really see that I wanted it and I was willing to put in the effort, but there were some pretty basic mistakes that were happening as well, which experienced sheep guys would have done things differently. So I am definitely going to, that's kind of my two takeaways, or my two big plans for the off season, is establish some mentorship relationships and do more off-season scouting. And I think if I correct those two errors this year, when it comes to hunting season next year, I will see a higher level of success. Okay, so back to the hunt. I found a dead elk, like a processed shot elk, in one of my spots, and it was like kind of frustrating, but then it was also like, why? I'm in the right spots. My intuition is good. There was tons of, what I've said here in my notes is, there was tons of old-ish sign. So what I mean by that is that there was lots of like 2-week-old sign and 1-week-old sign. Like, I was in an area that I felt was heavily populated with elk. Like, not everywhere, but there were several places where I found big wallows, 5 to 10 rubs, all in like a 50-meter radius area. Like the honey holes, the place where you're like, holy shit, like this is where the elk are. That's what I'm always looking for. And I found those spots, but I felt like the elk were there the week before. And there was a couple things happening. I think the pressure, I went at the beginning of the third week, September, 16th, 17th, because in my experience hunting down south, that's kind of peak rut. That's also peak rut in an archery area. Because of rifle, I think that first week is so key, because you're hunting unpressured elk. And people do seem to feel like the rut kicks in a little bit earlier in northern BC than it does south of the border. That may or may not be true, because it could be a function of less pressure, just making the elk easier to hunt, that gives you the perception that they're rutting harder. I don't know which, and to be honest, I don't really care which. But I will hunt earlier next year for sure. Because if I was in the spots I was in this year, but 1 to 2 weeks earlier, I feel supremely confident we would have killed an elk. 100%. Like, they were there, man. So that's also one of the reasons I'm going back to the same spots where I already was. I feel like it will have another week to have cooled off. Already the pressure was lessening to a great degree. Like, by the end of the 7-8 days we were hunting, there was 50% less dudes around than there was at the beginning. Still some big camps, still some dudes ripping around on quads, 100%, but not nearly to the same degree that there was at the beginning. And I think it was just later in the season, it was starting to taper off. And so I'm hoping maybe they're kicking into second rut. And that's some of the feedback I'd like from you guys in the area. If you've been out on the weekend, are they still bugling? I've got a couple reports that they are, and just what's their behavior like. Yeah, we got winded out on our last day. I got to say, overall, except for being a little too warm for my tastes for elk, weather was phenomenal. Rain for the first day and a half, Then it was sunny and clear every day, sprinkled for 10 minutes one day. But then on the last day, it was like 60-kilometer-an-hour gusts. Like, we went out and hunted the morning, and I told the boys after that, we're just going to pack up and go home. There's no point. And then another buddy of mine was hunting in the area, and he's like, yeah, it's so windy down here. We just walked into a calf cow and bumped them because they couldn't hear us. We couldn't hear them. And he's like, there's no point. We're going home too. So we packed up and headed home. So kind of lost the last half day, but the boys were pretty burnt out. So I also was kind of keeping that in mind. Oh, I made another mentorship note here. I said there's a difference between real mentorship and just getting some tips. And I think that's where I've made a mistake in the past, is that people have reached out and they've been willing to say, oh, try this next time, or try calling like this. And it's a very superficial relationship. And it's just like, and I appreciate it, super appreciate it. But that's different than developing a relationship with a mentor, which is like, in business and in other areas, has served me extremely well, because it's a deeper, more engaging relationship where they become connected or engaged with your success. Like, they start to feel responsible for your success. And it's a different type of relationship than somebody who just hits you up on Instagram and gives you a couple tips. And the reason I bring it up is that I thought I was engaging the community, and I thought I was looking to converse with dudes who were better than I am at hunting, but I think it was on a lighter level than I think is required. Okay, last note, I legitimately love failure. I feel like a laser focused discipline afterwards. And I do, like, it infuriates me when we go away and have a trip like we just did. My old man comes all the way from Ontario. My brother takes a week and a half off work, and I'm supposed to be the hunter in the family. I'm supposed to be the one who has the experience and take these guys and give them a good hunt. And they had a blast, and they were very nice about it. But at the end of the day, we didn't kill anything, and we didn't have near the action that I wanted to get them. And that infuriates me. And if we had have had a moderately successful hunt, I wouldn't be forced to confront some of the failures in my own development plan that I'm being forced to confront, like the lack of mentorship and the lack of the off-season plan. Like, I think luck sometimes robs from us the opportunity to learn from our mistakes. And that's kind of how I'm viewing this hunt, is I was forced to confront the deficiencies in my own hunting skills. And now I have no choice but to correct them. And if it wasn't for the failure, I wouldn't be shown these things. And that's why, I love it the way I do, because I feel like a simplicity and a purity afterwards. Like, I feel very focused right now. So that's the plan, man. Work on my weaknesses, double down on my strengths, and keep building myself as a hunter. It's been a rough go the last few hunts, and I'll be as transparent as I can about it with you guys, because I think a lot of you are in the same situation I'm in, and you're struggling, and you're trying to figure out how to get better and how to have more reliable success, and stop having success be a roll of the dice. Like, maybe I get something, maybe I don't. I don't know. I want it to be something that I have more control over. So anyways, that's the podcast. To recap a couple things, I'm going to head out Sunday afternoon, head back up to the Peace, equal opportunity hunt. I might even go around and look for some deer, simply because I want to fill the freezer, and basically whatever I have an opportunity to hunt. If anybody's up in the region and wants to get together for a day, I mean, let me know. I'd love to hunt with some other people. I'm a decent caller, so I'm happy to like call for somebody else if you want to take turns or whatever. And if you got any info as far as like how the rut's doing, and if it's still going off, or if there's regions where you're hearing bugles and other regions where you've heard through the grapevine that it's kind of gone quiet, any of that kind of info would help. But yeah, other than that, that's it for today's podcast. I am going to take gear with me on the road and try and record a podcast from the road and get that up next week so we don't have any more breaks in the content. And then next hunt after this, first week of November, I am going to Alberta to archery hunt whitetail. So that's a guided hunt. Pretty excited about that. That's always fun. I mean, I don't like to do all guided hunts because I do feel like the sense of accomplishment is a totally different feeling because you basically have somebody who's already figured the area out. But sometimes it's okay to have fun and just go on a fun hunt and see more animals than you would normally see and maybe shoot something bigger than you would normally shoot and just enjoy the experience. You know, it doesn't all have to be some ball busting grinder of a hunt. All right, as always, if I can help out in any way, jay@mindfulhunter.com or DM me on Instagram, mindful_hunter. If you could like, comment, share, subscribe, engage with the platform in any way possible, it's greatly appreciated. Support the podcast directly by going to mindfulhunter.com/shop, pick up a t-shirt, and stay tuned. Next 2 weeks, big news for a review-related project. All right, as always, thanks for tuning in.